pleasant nights, fellow travelers, along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if you please should join me here for a bit of very special palaver on Hail to Stephen King. This guy, that's right, El Rey, my dude, you can just call me Fuego for short, and I cordially welcome you here once again on a spectacular Saturday to the horror show and my El Rey worship, the weekly worship as I used to call it in the early days of this program, which has been going for nearly 200 episodes now, and this was not the initially intended episode for this week, but honestly, after a second viewing of Dr. Sleep, I just had to sit down and over the last couple days reread the book, just because of the fact that it had been a few years since I had, and while I felt like it was a very faithful representation of the source material that Mike Flanagan so amazingly put on screen, I knew that there were distinctive differences about the third act, obviously, and especially about the fact that Flanagan was trying to just find some way to merge the Kubrick verse, you know, with the original King vision, and that was a tough task. It seriously was. Now, I've already done a proper review, non-spoilery, with Marcia and with Cecil, but now, after a second viewing of the film and after just rereading the book, I really feel like I have a newfound appreciation for the film, and dare I say it, but I'm going to make a very bold proclamation here. I prefer the film. I prefer the film to the book, and it's funny because on the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, this was a question that was posed just recently by one of the members on there, so if you guys want to be a part of the Hail Ka-Tet, which I so affectionately call it, the Facebook group, I'm the sole admin and moderator on there, so jump on. We do nothing but Cy King family discussion, so that includes, you know, Joe Hill and Tabby and Owen a little bit here and there, but yes, somebody posed the inquiry of any Stephen King adaptations that you think are better than the source material, and I mean, for me, obviously, it's pretty much the Darabont stuff. I mean, Shawshank, The Mist, stuff like that, and I do really appreciate the hell out of Dolores Claiborne and the fact that it takes the original story, expands upon it, almost sequelizes it, so to speak. It's very fascinating, but after rereading Dr. Sleep, I definitely prefer the film, and I prefer the film because of the fact that, now, just to let you know, spoilers, this is going to be all spoilery discussion, and I think that Flanagan made some very, very bold moves, and I've got like pages and pages of notes here. The one thing that the book most definitely, as I am going to compare and contrast the two here throughout this discussion, one thing that the book definitely does better than the film is the fact that you really feel the constant, just tortured nature of our grown-up Danny Torrance. You know, Dan, all grown up, you know, who has become a doc to a degree, which is really ironic with the fact that that was his nickname as a kid. What's up, Doc? You just hear from the internal thoughts and stuff in this, like, 500-something pages, and by the way, one of the first deluxe editions that I ever got, whew, I love this Cemetery Dance version of the book, and that's what I, you know, there's so many great illustrations in this, but yeah, so you definitely, through just the internalization, you feel the constant temptation and pain that our grown-up Dan is going through as he tries to get sober, because the book, very, like, identically to the film, starts out with, you know, Danny and Wendy after they have escaped the Overlook, and, you know, some spirits have gone along with them, obviously, and, you know, the whole trick, you know, that Dick teaches him about, you know, the compartmentalizing and locking in boxes and stuff like that. I'll be honest, I don't really like that aspect of the story, and while Flanagan implemented it very well into his film, it's just, as far as some of the ideas in this book, it's not one that I was particularly fond of, but yeah, so we go from that to suddenly a grown-up Danny, and the grown-up Danny is just like his father, spitting image, as a matter of fact, aside from, you know, the fact that he's not married or anything like that, but, you know, he's boozing, he's fighting, he's crazy, he's reaching, you know, the bottom, basically, which, as you find out in the afterword from King, was a suggestion by his son Owen, as a matter of fact, you know? You have to have Danny reach his lowest, so to speak. And you definitely get the sense of that in the film, but you don't get the sense of, even after the years of sobriety and the triumph, the fact that, he's in AA and he's still doing his thing and he's made friends and he has his second chances and all of that other stuff. But yeah, he's constantly tempted. There is a scene in the book where he's sitting in the parking lot of this bar, and it's this cheap, shitty bar, and, pictures until, 9 o'clock, super cheap, whatever. And so that's the kind of stuff that the book most definitely does better, okay? And one of my favorite quotes as I was rereading this is, "Life was a series of ironic ambushes." And that's the thing. It's like, okay, you will be tempted when you least expect it, so to speak. And that's kind of what I got from that particular phrase. But another really interesting thing that you obviously don't get in the film is the fact that there is a reference to Charlie Manx from Nosferatu. And it's actually when Dick Halloran is telling a story to young Danny down in Tampa, I believe it is, and because they relocate to Florida because Wendy's like, we never wanted to see snow again. And so, yeah, that was obviously a thing. But yeah, he talks about his abusive black grandpa and the fact that, yes, obviously Dick Halloran, African-American dude and everything, but he wasn't even talking about the blackness of his grandfather as far as being the color of his skin. He's talking about the fact that, yeah, he was just like, he was a dark, like, evil guy. He, like, his soul was black, basically. And the fact that even after he died, he's still, like, I mean, it's like hints at sexual abuse, all kinds of nastiness, and so that was another thing that I definitely wanted to make mention of. But the biggest thing that obviously we had to just cross the bridge of with Flanagan's film is the fact that in the book, the Overlook is destroyed, boiler room status, and it's really funny how the finale of this Dr. Sleep film goes back to what happened in the actual source material of The Shining. It's very fascinating to me in the fact that Flanagan made such a conscientious decision to do that. And but yeah, so whereas in the book we've got the Overlook Lodge, which is like this campground that the True Knot, which is our psychic vampires, the fact that they own, this plot of land, and there's there's a specific different campground name, I can't recall it off the top of my head, sorry guys, but the fact that the Overlook Lodge is there, and whereas in the film, our finale takes place back in the Overlook, because in the Kubrick verse, there are other worlds than these, and that's why I'm okay with a lot of the changes here, when perhaps upon first viewing I wasn't. Upon second, I found them much more profound and interesting, and I don't know, it's the same sort of judgment that I reserved for like the Mist television series, or I don't know, I guess I can't give those good graces to the Dark Tower film, but nonetheless, yes, there are other worlds than these, and there are universes in the Kingverse that are drastically different, and, they have, just the craziest creatures, Lovecraft style, that will consume you with the quickness, like Crouch End status, but then there's others that very closely mirror our own, with the exception of a few slight nuances, like what we have when they get to a different Topeka, in Dark Tower 4. So, in any event, yeah, that was just some interestingness in the way that it was just kind of I don't know, orchestrated and everything. But stuff that I prefer about the film is the fact that it definitely goes for it as far as the brutality. There are a lot of characters that are definitely more developed in this, like, the doctor who hires Danny, for instance, to be the orderly and everything, Dr. John. Yeah, he's pretty much an afterthought in the film. Doesn't really have anything, much going on for him. And in the source material, Billy, who is the guy who has, the train, that he, initially hires Dan on to assist with, and Teeny Town and all that other stuff. In the book, he is like the old white dude in his 70s, whereas, he is most definitely a younger and non-Caucasian guy in the film. But besides the changing of a couple colors of skin of certain people and things like that, and also making Snakebite Andy significantly younger. I think she was played by like a 16 or 17-year-old actress, whereas in the source material, and she does get her own chapter and extensive introduction describing, at least here in the book, the extent of the abuse that her father inflicted upon her sexually, the fact that she killed him. I mean, so you get a little bit more out of that character, but she's significantly older. She's in her 30s in the book, as opposed to in the film where, you know, she's jailbait status, and, you know, she's still, you know, like kind of marking up, and she has the power of the push and all of that other stuff. So that, yeah, I honestly liked the portrayal a little bit better of her in the film as well, you know, and in some ways I liked the character of Billy better, and the fact that their friendship made a little bit more sense as far as like being on the level, as opposed to like kind of a pseudo father type like you get from Billy in the book. But more so than anything else, Flanagan boldly kills a lot of characters that survive in the source material. And that's really the one thing that I will definitely give Flanagan credit for, is his boldness in his adaptation of Dr. Sleep. The fact that he very unflinchingly, like, I mean, Abra's father killed by Crow Daddy in the film, and yet very obviously survives in here. And boy, I mean, Billy's death, where, you know, Snakebite Andy, like, pushes him to take the gun and blow his brains out. Like, this is much more compelling and crazy stuff. And so, I don't know, I feel like King almost approached this book with a little bit too much of a sentimental kind of outlook and stuff. And, you know, once again, this is personal opinion. If any of you guys who have read both the book and seen the film, I know my buddy Lou, Lou Sisma, I always forget his last name like an idiot, but he's got a Stephen King podcast that I guested on, and I know that this was his most anticipated Cy King thing of the year, much more so than It Chapter 2, and the same for me. I love this book, and I still do, but I feel like some of the streamlined aspects, I feel like the fact that it was just a little more brutal really worked well for the film. But as far as a few other things that were in the source material but omitted from the film, Abra's great-grandmother, her Momo, she's very significant in the finale and the killing of a good chunk of the True Knot. And that's another thing that I have to say is in the source material here that I'm not the biggest fan of. So the little baseball boy that is Jacob Tremblay in the film and very brutally killed. That was a scene that was so effectively orchestrated. I mean, just the blood and seeing them torture him, and it's just really... oh God, it was supremely unsettling. Like, Flanagan really sold that scene, y'all, and I appreciated the hell out of it, as graphic and disturbing as it was. I mean, granted, it could have been worse, but I felt like the point was very adequately put across. But so there's a theme that leads to the demise of the True Knot, who are also in the source material. I mean, they're fleshed out a little bit more in the fact that they're like watching the two towers come down, you know, when 9/11 happens, which also Abra had some sort of like premonition about, even as a very, very young child. But you were just given the extent of the understanding of how well connected they are, how just financially well off they are, how the fact that they have techies like that, what's his name, John, or what the heck is his name, Jimmy Numbers. They've got like specialty doctors. They have means of keeping themselves concealed, and King definitely develops that a whole lot better in this book. But interestingly enough, I definitely feel like Flanagan's film humanizes them better. You know, like significantly, as a matter of fact. And whereas as the book progresses, you get a lot more jumping back and forth between the True Knot and between, you know, Danny and Abra. But Flanagan in his film balances it almost 50-50 throughout. Like, you will get one scene with Dan, and then you immediately jump back and you get stuff with Crow Daddy and with Rosie. And it's just, I don't know, I almost feel like whereas you learn more about the True Knot in the source material, I feel like Flanagan definitely humanized them more. And even though, you know, you still in both the film and the source material have the death of that grandfatherly character and stuff, I didn't really sympathize as much with that beat and with that scene in the book as I did in the portrayal on the film. Also, the whole astral projection aspect, even though it factors in so much more heavily in the book, boy, Flanagan did it so friggin' well, especially when Rosie, Rose the Hat, our main villain and the leader of the True Knot, does it herself. Like, that scene where she goes and is trying to peer into the mind of Abra, and then Abra, in the book, she's like Daenerys or something from Game of Thrones. I don't know, guys. Sorry, I don't watch or read the George R.R. Martin stuff, but she's like an anime character in the film, and that maybe I wasn't like as big of a fan of, but nonetheless, the way Flanagan filmed that stuff was badass, like really, really good, really, really effective. I know some purists might have wanted Rosie to look just a little bit more fearsome with like her weird snaggletooth and stuff as described in the book, but I don't know, making her more beautiful and enchanting, and especially the fact that, Snakebite is like, you're the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. Rebecca Ferguson is enchantingly attractive, but she plays the role with such viciousness. To see someone so beautiful be such a hideous, just evil bitch, for no lack of a better word. And Irish Rosie, as she was initially called when dude took her in, centuries and stuff before, when it was primarily Native American territory. But yeah, that is, just to double down on the point before I move on to another topic, is the fact that, yeah, even though we learn more about the background of the True Knot and stuff in the source material, I feel like Flanagan humanized them and made them feel less one-dimensional, I guess. So that was definitely something. And obviously there are Easter eggs galore in this film. I mean, from Tet on the bus to, Dandelo, the whole, poster when Snakebite is leaving the theater, and, Crow Daddy and Rosie, initially approach her and everything. I mean, the changing of the name of the power plant, or the Chemical Works or whatever the hell it was, where they actually kill Baseball Boy and stuff. I mean, but now I'm remembering the point that I wanted to make about the fact that it factors very heavily in the book, and it's completely just overlooked in the film, and I think for good reason, is the fact that the kid apparently had like dormant measles or something, and so when the True Knot take his steam, first there's one person who gets measles, and then they all start getting it, and just the fact that there is this susceptibility to disease from taking the wrong steam, I didn't like that point very much. And, Abra's grandmother, or great-grandmother, I should specify, Momo and stuff, that her steam being diseased, and the fact that Danny, like, takes it in himself, and then they have this big confrontation at the end on what used to be the Overlook, this campgrounds area now, where the Overlook lodges and stuff, where, there is still a scene where a bunch of, True Knot peeps are shot up, and it takes place, and I mean, it's very well represented in the film, and it's pretty much identical to what we get in the source material, but, the fact that there were other True Knots besides the ones that were shot up when Snakebite is killed and everything, that's the one thing where this disease-riddled steam plays a hefty part. I didn't like it. I don't know. And in comparison, I just was not the biggest fan, but yeah, I already mentioned the changes to Billy, the fact that John has a larger role. Also, I mean, I in some ways like the fact that Dick, as opposed to talking through the corpse of a deceased person that Danny has just helped through into the afterlife, that he actually just appeared as himself, as a ghost, as an apparition. I actually preferred that in the film. Okay, what else? Yeah, there are other worlds than these. That's really the biggest thing. That's something that Dan actually says to Dr. John, who is the pediatrician and, knows Abra and everything. And that's where I give the biggest, just kind of a pass to the changes in Flanagan's film. And the fact that Kubrick's Shining film was another world than that of the source material up there. Just like Flanagan's film is even another world in and of itself, as it tries to, make amends with how Kubrick changed things and stuff like that. And so just keeping that in mind is where I can just be accepting and in some cases embracing of these changes that Flanagan made in his film. I mean, the brutal death of Billy, as I said, who survives in the book, the Crow Daddy killing Abra's father, which does not happen in the novel. I mean, these are big things, but So yeah, the True Knot and the whole disease from the steam and everything. So yeah, I definitely covered that. Yeah, shocking deaths on this level for sure. And that's one thing that the film really does well. And I have to say, the death of Dan, he doesn't make it. He doesn't make it in the film. And it added like an additional like just sadness and poignance to the proceedings and stuff. And the fact that he encounters Lloyd, you know, his father, and the fact that the little E.T. boy was playing like the pseudo stand-in for Jack Nicholson, he pretty much looked the part very well, I gotta say. And the recreation, obviously, that you know, Flanagan did of all of those different scenes, brilliant, very, very well put together, and I appreciated the hell out of that. You know, the fact that as opposed to, like, thank God we didn't try to, like, CGI or de-age Nicholson or something like that. I don't know. That would have been just a little strange. But, yeah, in the finale, as opposed to having it take place, you know, in these, it's like this weird, like, I don't know, it's almost like a canopy, like, overlooky kind of, and yes, overlook, obviously. But, yeah, the fact that that's where, you know, Rose is at the end, and you get, like, just as Abra's astral projecting and, you know, like trying to choke out Rose and all this other stuff after, you know, her Momo steam has killed all the rest of the True Knot. It's good, but I just felt like the way that in the film Flanagan decided to just open up all those lock boxes and just let the ghosts that Dan had gone to such extreme lengths over all of those 30-something years to just keep trapped and then let them all go. And even after he vanquishes Rose, there's still all of those loose spirits, and the only way that he can somehow make amends and actually, you know, save Abra, who actually is there at the Overlook with him, as opposed to, you know, the whole projection thing like she does in the book, where she's back in New Hampshire and, you know, she's not actually there. There's like this whole, there's like a little bit of trickery, like a little bit of bait and switch, where there's like a mannequin in the car with Billy and just all this. I don't know. I felt like it was just a little too much. It was a little contrived. It was a little convoluted. And I love Cy King, but I feel like Flanagan tightened up the finale. And yes, I know it's kind of like travesty in the fact that, yes, the Overlook still was up and all this other stuff. But there is still a lot of bait and switch and a lot of, I don't know, messing with perception, you know, once they even finally do get to the Overlook, you know, Dan and Abra in a physical form in this particular occasion. And I just found it so cathartic in the fact that Dan, just in the same way that his father did in the source material, it was like the wheel coming around full circle, you know, that wheel of Ka, just like Dick says in the film. And I love the fact that, you know, Flanagan is very obviously a tower junkie, like myself, like many of you who are watching this. And I don't know, I felt like the changes he made worked and in some cases improved. And Danny sacrificing himself for, you know, not just the greater good of, you know, Abra, but to finally vanquish and put to rest the evil forces in the Overlook himself, I thought was very legit and very, very cool. Yeah, it's... I just absolutely adored it. I really, and I want to go see it a third time at this particular rate because of the fact that as I was rereading the book, I just kept saying to my lady, I was like, I need to show you The Shining and I need to go and watch this film a third time because of the fact that I just wanted to see it visualized as I was reading. And the first 2/3 of the film are so incredibly accurate, and it's really not until that third act where the drastic amount of the deviation actually takes place. But yeah, I will once again double down and say that I feel like King approached it from just a little bit too sentimental of a side. And also, I like the fact that Flanagan omitted they're like actually being related, Abra and Dan. I kind of found the fact of, you know, his father, you know, Jack Torrance, actually, you know, having this affair and all this other stuff, and him actually really being Uncle Dan. I don't like it. I don't. It just, now granted, I know there's all little intertwining in intricacies and connections and everything, so I mean, maybe on a constant reader level, it makes sense that coincidence would be there. But I don't know. I felt like Flanagan made a wise decision by making Aber African American, or Taft African American, you know, a black father, basically, you know, and that's even a cooler connection because of the fact that, you know, Dick being an African American man himself, and, you know, the closeness with Danny in that regard. It just, that made more sense to me than some sort of coincidental connection of him actually being Uncle Dan, you know, as opposed to Uncle Dan. And, yeah, I mean, the book is still really good, though. The book is still really, really exceptional, you know? I mean, this is a coincidence beyond coincidence. Yeah, I think that's even uttered in the book, if I'm not mistaken, which is why I have it here in my notes. But fear, man. You know, the beginning of the book is the fact that the old AA saying of fear is fuck everything and run. But then the resolution at the end of the book, once we near like the epilogue, is face everything and recover. And the fact that the past defines the present and everything. I still love this book, guys. I really, really do. But having Danny not make it, just the more I thought about it, and upon initial viewing, I had significant reservations about the changes. But second viewing, the more I thought about it, the more I gave it close, clear consideration, rumination. It just, I don't know, it spoke to me more. The sadness and the sacrifice I just found so profound. And yeah, I think that is as good a time as any to extend a grande gracias to all of you and to urge you to watch Dr. Sleep the film. I'm drastically disappointed in the fact that it underperformed so poorly at the box office. And this is something that I said on the Will Willis-Credia show that I am very proud to take a part of every single Monday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, is that I feel like so many people, like, they worship that Shining film. I mean, the fact that we have a documentary about all of the subtext and, you know, the moon landing stuff and all of this other shizzle, like, I feel like people just put The Shining on a pedestal so much, especially people who are just casual horror fans, who have never read the source material, who don't understand King's reservations and dissatisfaction with that adaptation, that's why a lot of people were just like, F that. I'm not going to go see The Shining, or the Shining sequel. The Shining was a perfect horror film. It's a beautiful film, granted. I will never discredit the fact that Kubrick is an amazing director. I personally prefer, like, Strangelove and Clockwork Orange, but that's just me, you know? It's a terrific looking film. It is a beautiful slow burn, but it most definitely, it went for style over substance, I contend, in a lot of ways, and people have differing opinions about that, but I feel like the casual horror fan, unfortunately, just adores that movie so much that they were probably like, no, I don't need to go see a Shining sequel because of the fact that The Shining didn't need a sequel. I contend that it did, okay? And while the book is fantastic, and I urge all of you to read it because you will get some additional bits of the story, this is one of the few instances where I feel like people need to open up their minds and actually be willing to give this film a chance because it is fantastic. It's one of my favorite films of the year upon second viewing. It is so strikingly beautiful. The death of all the True Knot people, like as they like decompose and everything, is grisly and gross. A baseball boy getting killed, the just sad ending that sits with you, where Abra is having the conversation at the very end, and she's talking to Dan, and you're wondering if he actually made it out, you know, as opposed to sitting in there and just making the boiler room blow the whole flippin' place up. And where her mother Lucy comes in and she's like, who are you talking to? And she's like, nobody. It made me cry. It really, really did. And whereas the ending in the book is the fact that, yeah, Dan makes it, he celebrates his 15 years of sobriety, and he has to go on Abra's 15th birthday and advise her to mind her temper and to be careful with alcohol because she was at a friend's party and she sipped some booze and her mother grounded her for 2 weeks for it and she's all pissed and stuff, and she very obviously has this Torrance temper. And that's what Dan just basically advises her about, and then in turn he goes and like holds the hand of some guy he doesn't really care very much about and helps him through to the next level of existence, you know, the next level of that tower or whatever you want to say. And that's definitely something that Flanagan's film did splendidly, was just getting across the serenity that, you know, Dan is able to give those people as he's like he's remembering things that they experienced. And the film did a fantastic job of getting across that just soothing presence that Dan is able to bring people, and just that sense, you know, that way beyond insight and intuition, you know. And so, once again, obviously, as I always tell you, read Stephen King, but damn, go and support this film, because it's apparently going to lose Warner Brothers a lot of money as it stands, because they were thinking it was going to be a significant success. They moved it from January to early November. Perhaps it would have performed better in October. I'm not, you know, that's not what I'm here to speculate, but nonetheless, even if you just adore The Shining and you were like all over its nuts, I mean, come on, give this sequel a chance, because it just holds so much merit. And Flanagan is a voice in horror to be reckoned with. I mean, I loved Gerald's Game, I loved Hush, I mean, pretty much everything I've seen him do. And then last year, where he just solidified his reputation with The Haunting of Hill House, which is one of the best things in horror I've possibly ever watched. And this film is just on a similar par of beauty and tragedy, and it's fantastic. Dr. Sleep is definitely, as I close out my spoiler discussion here, one of the best films of 2019. The year of 19, baby. So, I have been Jaime and Fuego, and y'all can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, but in a destination besides here on The Horror Show, because I have my own personal channel called Infuegotainment. I have been doing all kinds of reviews over the course of this year since relaunching the channel. Everything from Wild Rose, one of my favorite little indie films of the year, to Good Boys, which is honestly one of the funniest things that any of you have the opportunity to check out. It's on the red boxes and the home releases now. It's tremendous. I'm also doing tons of Star Wars coverage as we approach The Rise of Skywalker, release episode 9, closing out the entire saga series next month. And currently on Disney Plus, we have The Mandalorian, and I'm reviewing each of those episodes as they drop, and the first 2 reviews are up already. And obviously, you're here on The Horror Show, though, because you love the scarific stuff. So if you have not liked, shared, subscribed, done all of that jazz, we greatly appreciate it. We implore you, and we thank you. Danke, arigato, merci, gracias, obviously. And once more, check out the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, where, yes, you can interact with myself and many other amazing constant readers that I just have such a humbling honor to share palaver with. And once again, show business every Monday on the Willis Greedia YouTube channel, 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern. So that's going to be the end of the proceedings for today. Also, just to remind you, Revival is the book of the month, and on the last Saturday here in November, I'm going to be doing our live book of the month discussion all about that fantastically frightening book for its 5-year anniversary. So I have been Jaime and Fuego. Y'all have been awesome, and thank you for bearing with the Steven Seagal look today. So until the Wheel of Ka, that's right, comes around once more, I shall say hasta luego, sen amigos, but I am hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver, constant readers, sooner rather than later. And until then, remember to stay scared and read Stephen King. Yes, I know, but also in this case, go out and watch Dr. Sleep.